go ahead and I can. Right. So I just wanted to bring up some of the survey stuff again real quick, because what we didn't really talk about was actions based on that. Now, we did some meetings having to do with the mental health stuff, because that was way up there in terms of what people were interested in. And those worked pretty well. But honestly, it's an ongoing issue, and we should probably keep doing something along those lines in terms of making sure people know what is available. I mean, probably yearly, we should have a meeting specifically about mental health issues so that people know what all the resources are. But there are some other things that came out of it. Give me just a second here. Let's see if I can find them. Oh man, I was going through so much stuff. Some potential outcomes for the survey. Let me just read you this stuff. Access to healthcare and access to mental health care. To address this issue will depend on the reasons for it. Is it mobility, inability to fill out paperwork, lack of funding, not knowing that there are resources? All these can be addressed. We could sponsor a presentation from LTD on transportation options. There are organizations such as Love Inc. that actually coordinate volunteers to help people get to medical appointments when their clients can't use any other transportation. We could sponsor a workshop on how to apply for the Affordable Care Act and help others do so. We could include information on the healthcare exchanges. Next time, we might want to try to do that a little later. Everything seems to happen at the end of the year, just before January. So what we might want to think about is trying to sponsor something in November or something like that, so people have a month to digest all that stuff. Or we can work on something along those lines. But there's an awful lot of people. I was going back over it, and it looks like 35% of the households were saying that somebody in their household doesn't have a healthcare provider. 80% of the households have somebody who's got a chronic disease. 20% of the households at that time said somebody's lacking health insurance. And less than half of them said they're very healthy. 28% of the households have lack of access to mental health. That was a real big issue. Mental health, again, and be willing to bet with everything that we've been dealing with the pandemic, that's gotten, even healthcare providers, everybody who's currently in healthcare is losing their fucking mind. So sorry, don't mean to be dramatic, but it's true.
I'm losing my mind and I'm not in healthcare.
Yeah, I know, it's true. So what I'm just saying is, and I don't want to spend too much time on it right now, but there are things that we could actually do besides just giving people information about it, although that's really, really critical. And at some point, we might want to have a special meeting just about things that can be done to follow through on some of that stuff. So I don't want to put so much time into it right now, because we are also doing that in other ways, what with dealing with the COVID stuff and all that. So we are in fact doing a lot of the stuff that we were talking about in the survey, just on a specific way instead of in a general way. So that's good. We're doing that. So I don't want to put much more energy into that right now. There's a whole bunch of other stuff going on, and you've got stuff having to do with the housing grants, and that's huge, because as we know, housing is healthcare. So that's a huge thing that we can follow up on. And if we can say, if we can just get a little bit of information about how things went last Sunday, that would be very, very cool. Okay, so having said all that, so what's going on with the COVID grants?
Sweet. Hey, Thea. Hey, Saoirse.
Hi, Thea.
We're in the depths of the the Public Health and Safety Committee meeting right now. For those of you who want to join for the 7 p.m. general meeting, you can bop out or come back in at 7, or turn off your camera. Yeah, I'd love to share more about the COVID grants and the housing grants, Anand, and this new grant opportunity, and hopefully bringing you,
great.
myself, Doriandra, and then Megan in on another meeting.
Yep.
But I'm wondering if Thea has any updates too on public health and safety, because she and I talked earlier today, and I thought that she might have some stuff she wanted to share with you, Anand.
Oh, great. Hi, Thea.
So, Ian, even after and Ian, after I talked to you today, Ian, I was thinking about it. So, Anon, I talked with Chief Skinner today because Stephen and AKA Jesus and his disciples are right there. They moved from Nelson's to in front of Bari's, and they're now throwing their belongings into Bari's area. There's someone in front, like in their walkway, so people can't get into the restaurant. And there's a lot of drug use going on and dealing. And then there's in front of Sweet Life, which isn't in the Whitaker, but the gals own homes in the Whitaker. It's right on the edge. I don't want to get picky about it.
Whitaker adjacent.
Yeah. So what's happening is we have a lot of people that are doing warming fires and cooking fires.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a huge concern because, yeah,
Sure.
we're raining, but as Ian and I were discussing, we're going to come out of the rainy season and we will have said for 4 months, oh, it's okay to have a warming fire. Oh, it's okay to have a cooking fire. And it's still really scary. Fire danger is still really high. And who's to say if we don't have freezing weather
Sure.
and we have fire danger, then we don't have water to fight the fires. So I thought about it. I thought, could as a health and safety committee give out some of those, the hand warmers, the poppers?
Oh, absolutely.
I know a lot of the social groups do. Could we start handing out those? Because that's the huge issue right now is that
Sure.
people are trying to stay warm and dry.
I love that. That's great.
So I thought that would be one way that we could kind of help out in that sense. I know the mission has
Dollar Tree.
Well, and the mission has tons of socks, so we can still get dry socks that they want to give out. So those are just some possibilities. But the fire danger is real. The chief is trying to work on getting these people moved to a safer place.
Right.
But that's going to take time.
Yeah.
And we're just literally moving them around the neighborhood. And once again, these are all the people that don't want to follow the rules in WJ.
Right.
These people have been asked to leave WJ, so they're not going to want to follow the rules on the street either.
Right.
So how do we approach that?
It's a good question. I think
and I liked your article you posted.
Well, the main thing seems to be making some sort of actual personal connection with people. I mean, that seems to be the only way people get influenced, but that's true with everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, that's been true. How do you get people to get the freaking vaccine? Right? I mean, they have to trust the people who are talking to them. And right. It's not an easy thing. It's not an easy thing.
And I know the girls that own Sweet Life tried to reach out to the guy that's been spreading out farther and farther and farther.
Sure.
They had no luck.
Right.
So, and I'm working with, I've got to get a hold of Kelly because they cleaned up the camps on Monroe, but there's tons of needles left behind and there's fecal matter and there's somebody posted it today and it's like, it's dangerous.
Yeah.
So it's that whole balance thing again, Anon.
Yeah, I know. And honestly, I don't have a direct answer for it. I would say this though. It as odd as it may sound, it might be easier, maybe not in front of restaurants and stuff like that, but for folks who are actually over at the park. What if we actually got FEMA trailers over there? I mean, instead of having them in tents, which presents issues in terms of where you put your stuff, right? Because there's never enough area to put your stuff in a tent. It's going to spread out.
Sorry, this is the hospital calling. I'll let you guys talk. I'll be right.
But that's just an idea. I can't help but think that living outside in winter is an emergency, and that's what FEMA trailers are supposed to be for. They're for emergencies. I know it's never really been used that way, but I think if we could get the state to declare an emergency, I don't know. One of the things they're talking about in the article was trying to get people to move from place to someplace else. They're not willing to do that. But if you put the place right there, maybe they'd do that. I don't know. But I still think yeah, go ahead, Ian.
Yeah, I think that having more sustainable emergency shelter for our unhoused neighbors is super important. But I don't think that creating more infrastructure at Washington Jefferson Park is the solution anymore. When we were talking about sanitary housing, it was before
Right,
folks had even been moved to Washington Jefferson, right? And we were
right.
talking about the same idea. I think the FEMA trailers are like an upgraded version of what we were talking about then. But I think we've gotten to the point now where it's just we don't have the support of community members nor the city. I talked to Peter Chavanes, who's
Mm,
the homeless resource coordinator. Margaret's about to jump on and on for the city of
okay,
Eugene, and he said that they're working to transition people to the safe sleep sites, and they should have like
right.
140 sites opened up in the next couple of months. So yeah, I think that we're going to still see the number of people at WJ go down. Right now, we're at about 150, and so yeah, I'm kind of a little reticent to create more infrastructure at Washington Jefferson just because it seems like there's so little support for that, but there is support for
Right.
transitioning people to the safe sleep sites.
If we can get them to go, that's great. I mean, if it's safe and it's dry and it's warm, that's certainly better than not. I mean, I'm not really opposed to anything that works. I'm a big supporter of whatever works. I have no religious convictions about how it should work out, just so long as it works out. Okay. Well, I can see her point. I can see Thea's point, and I certainly don't disagree with it. And certainly, if they're getting in the way of the sidewalks, that's a safety issue. It's a safety hazard, especially if some of that involves toxic stuff, whether it's human toxic stuff or any other toxic stuff, and that's got to be addressed for sure. And uh, I honestly don't know how. I mean, can we develop our own community teams that can just go out there and just have a little conversation and go how we support your ability to live in the community, but we don't support this? I don't know. It might take something. We might need to have a separate conversation about that because that's deep, and we don't really have time for a whole lot of that right now. But it's something we probably need to talk about. Okay. Well, wherever Thea gets back, I'll say thank you to her because it was a great thoughts. Okay. Anybody else? Are you ready for more, Ian, or somebody else got something else? I'm not seeing anybody else jumping up, so I guess it's yours.
Did Doriandra, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, it's so
Okay.
interesting, Anand. If I drive down the coast often to
Yeah.
head out south, and if you go through the little town that's just north of Reedsport, I think it's called Gardner, there's all the
yeah.
FEMA trailers that are still stored there on the west side of the highway that were never allocated for the McKenzie fire
Holy
response.
holy crap.
Yeah, they're still sitting there, and there's been some confusion as to what will happen to them, but every time I see them, that's something I just kind of like, oh, why can't we use them?
You know anybody with a forklift?
Thea's got a good truck, but no, just kidding.
Forklift and a flatbed.
Yeah, it's stunning. They're just literally lined up as far as the eye can see. So
Well, we might want to get a hold of some representatives about that because that's just crazy. When
mhm,
you got people out in freezing weather and
yeah,
obvious solutions. I mean, yeah, that's just bad. I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you.
sure.
Was a gardener, right? You're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Do
remember
we
that.
know do we know what they've done with the Old Red Lion? Because that was filled with people from the fire as well. The city bought it. Actually knew a couple people that lived there. And I think it's pretty empty at this point.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you interested in finding out more about that?
About the Red Lion?
Yeah.
I can do that, certainly.
Thank
I know
you.
somebody that knows somebody.
That's what it takes. Somebody who knows somebody. That's
Yeah.
right. That's how a lot of this stuff ends up working.
I'll make myself a note so I don't forget.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
And Anand, I'll look into those FEMA trailers. I have a connection through CERT that may be able to link it
Wow,
through our
that's
counties.
totally cool. Thank you, Doriandra. Wow. It's so nice to know people. Anything else?
I have another question for you, Anand.
Of course you do.
I wanted to go through the clinic supplies tonight. These are the ones that Doriandra asked us to put forward. So it includes $6,000 for Pizzeria DOP. It has up to $1,000 for Eugene Bleeds, which is going to be way over what we pay them. Thermoses, this one has little asterisks next to it because it would basically be $12,000 we approve for water bottles, adding another $3,000 onto that. And I would need to check with the folks at FEMA to see if it's an allowable expense. This came from Margaret and Angie. Pop-up tents, these are to replace these are to have additional pop-up tents at our clinic. Margaret, I'm going to be Santa for you and buy you another pop-up tent for the one that was damaged. Unfortunately, we can't use grant funds to pay for personal expenses, but this is just we won't do it again, and maybe I'll throw in like a bottle of whiskey or something, so it's extra special Santa. Insurance, so the insurance here is really high, but our insurance might go up like tenfold next year. An additional $5,000 in N95 masks, in addition to the $5,000 we already have. But this is the one I really wanted your basically.
Yeah, I see what you're doing with that. Okay, go ahead.
Anyway, I don't know if you wanted to share with folks kind of your good deed going punished, because it's kind of it hasn't gotten out of control. I think between the two of us, we've kind of stabilized stuff.
Yeah,
but if you could kind of break down for people what you've been doing, and then I saw Doriandra had her hand up too.
Doriandra, you got something?
Oh, did you all see the email?
There's been several of them today.
Yeah, you got a great response from Dr. Ludke.
Yeah, he was very supportive. His main thing was he wanted to make sure there's this whole thing with Lane County. If you're involved with them and you're doing anything else on the side, they want to make sure that everybody knows that it's not a part of Lane County. Yeah. And I think how that popped up was in my original email to Dr. Ludke and oh God, the woman who runs the mission. I'm terrible with names. Cheryl. Anyway, I mentioned that I was Cheryl. Thank you. I worked with Lane County. Not that that was part of it, but that was I do lab work through them, which is why I qualify to do the lab work for the COVID testing. That was the only reason I brought it up. But I actually got a lot of flack from it at work today. So yeah, I know. My boss pulls me in and says, "Did you say that you were working through Lane County to be able to do this?" I go like, "No." Yeah, I know. Anyway, so we had to really clear that up. The reason backing this up, and the reason we're talking about the health law insurance is because when we contacted Cheryl about the possibility of having her sign the CLIA request as the owner, because we have to have somebody in there, and she was the closest person that would qualify. She was saying she had lots of experience with law. She was very concerned with how it worked out, and that they didn't have the ability to get themselves a law lawyer. And Ian piped up very timely, thank you, Ian, saying that the Whitaker Community Council might be able to provide a health law lawyer for them to make sure that everything was on the up and up and they wouldn't get in any trouble, which I thought was a great way to deal with it. I'm not really sure exactly how straightforward that whole thing is, because I get the impression that we're getting a little pushback from Yes, thank you, Ian. That's correct. Um, in case you guys don't know, on the over here in the chat section, we've got other stuff going on. That I think some of that pushback that I got at work today might have actually been coming from the mission, but I'm not quite sure about that. But we'll see. I think Ian mentioned between him and I that I think we're going to get this all settled out. But in the end, it comes down to is Cheryl or somebody from the mission who can claim to be responsible for that property willing to put their name on the CLIA request? Because that's what we're going to need for that. I can put my name in as the laboratory director because I've got that skill set, but we need to have somebody. Right? Yeah, for the wellness clinics from January. So in order for us to be able to do the rapid tests, somebody's got to put their name on there. And Ian had suggested, I hope you saw, Doriandra, that you might be able to talk with them about it once we get the thing sorted out. We're going to bring this to the board too. But if we can afford to get somebody who's practiced in health law, we should be able to at least deal with that particular barrier. I think that was a great idea on your part, Ian. Thank you very much. I owe you a lot on that one. Talk about whiskey. I'll get you a jug, for God's sakes. Anyway, so that's what's going on with that. It was a barrier. We possibly have addressed that, and we'll see how it goes. Yes, Thea, what's going on?
Sorry, I apologize. That was an
No,
update
no.
with my nephew. Cheryl's a lawyer, so she's going to have contacts. I mean, that was her former job. She left that, so she should have contacts big time on
He
that.
did mention that. I don't know. I actually put the first thing she sent to me up on our board site so everybody could see it. So she actually did mention she had 28 years in law,
Okay.
right? And, here's the other thing which I thought was a little interesting, and I think Doriandra, you might have caught on to it. She mentioned Dr. Ludke saying that something looked not good, which is why I included him in the letter. Because if she's going to say things like that, I want to make sure it's in front of him and not behind his back. And then he came back saying, no, I think Anand being a director of the lab is a good idea. So I don't know if that actually addresses her issues or if she's got other issues, but we're also addressing the whole thing with the law stuff. I know she should be able to handle it okay, but you know, we've got other ways if that's not enough. So
I have a quick question.
Sure.
And I'm just curious about this. So at my work, there's a gal who works there that was a registered CNA.
Right.
And she got her CLIA license, and they're actually doing tests in the parking lot of my work.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be, I mean, if I was thinking about this earlier, if it came down to it, we could pick a day and, you know, talk to Tad and Todd and do a line through the parking lot at Red Apple.
Yeah, we could.
I mean, there are a lot of options. It would be a shame to not do it and offer it at the clinics because I know that's part of the whole thing.
Sure.
But I read the letter that she sent back, and I'm familiar with the testing and familiar with the registration that you have to do and submitting the samples and doing all of that. And I don't understand exactly what her issue is.
Yeah, I think there's more going on there than is being discussed out in the open. I think you're right.
Yeah.
But I don't know how to address it other than what we're doing. But having a backup plan if this doesn't work is not a bad idea. It's a good idea. Thank you.
Yeah. And the one thing that I feel that we should be top of mind is that Doriandra, on behalf of the board, has developed a fantastic relationship with the mission, and it's building on the work that Thea's done, and it's building on the work that other folks have done for ages and ages. So if the board wants to do it tonight, if you're still game to explain these dynamics to the board during the motion, cool. Then
not a problem.
We can just say like, hey folks, this is our initial plan. And if that doesn't work, we can go to plan B. And plan B would be finding another provider. I don't think having it at a separate location would be worthwhile, right? because I feel like our clinics are so well attended. Doriandra's shaking her head no.
Right.
That the co-location of services, just in the same way we have Eugene
Right.
Bleeds, and we've done in the past with Haircuts and HIV Alliance and Waste to Taste. So yeah, I want to make sure that what we do makes sense.
Right. And also, I don't want to do anything that disrupts our relationship with the mission. We're doing great work there. Anything I am concerned about is not as important as making sure that we at least keep doing what we're already doing. Right.
True.
So I'm gonna push to do the testing as much as I can without anything getting disrupted.
And I understand my point wasn't always to say that for us to do it somewhere else.
Sure.
I'm just saying that we could easily do it somewhere else and it wouldn't be an issue. And I don't understand what the barrier is
Right.
at the mission at the moment. I think it would be beneficial for them.
I would think so too. And I don't either. Thea, what's going on?
So two things. First one is, one of the things that happened when Doriandra and I were there looking at the mission, I had brought up that we had someone living on your street, that van, Anon, with the family that was living on your street.
Yep.
They sent somebody over that day because Susan said they were gone that afternoon. So somebody from the mission went over and talked to that family.
Interesting.
So that I haven't confirmed it with the mission, but that was the only thing. I went and talked to them. They've been there for weeks on your street.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, we'll see if we can get one of our outreach teams. So, and that afternoon they were gone. So it's kind of exciting that we've got that new connection there. And then jumping back to your FEMA things, Anon, is there somewhere I can contact? Because like the 13th and Chambers site could really use trailers. That's a mud hole.
Well, you might have missed it when you were off. Doriandra was saying that outside of the city of Gardner, there's like a ton of FEMA trailers not being used for anything. And she said she was going to look into finding out if she has contacts to find out more about it.
Oh, okay. So in your spare time, Doriandra. All right. Sounds
good. That's right. In her copious spare time.
I didn't talk with it, but I was trying to hear what was going on with my nephew and what was going on there. So
sure.
I'd be happy to look for that because I've been pushing FEMA trailers for 3 years now.
I think that's a great idea. They're there. They're for emergencies.
Yeah.
How much more do you have to have than people dying in winter? But okay. Anyway. So yeah, I'll be happy to follow up with that, Ian, at the board meeting. Not a problem.
And then I just want to throw one more idea in the mix as a stopgap, Anand. Sure. I had started this conversation preliminarily with Brooke from HIV Alliance.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, I had, because the CLIA certification wasn't sorted out yet, I had asked them if they could provide the rapid test under their auspice and licensing and whatnot at our clinics. And because of the rain, they actually canceled right before we were set to go last Sunday. So that is a conversation I'm still working on as kind of a stopgap until the CLIA certification is resolved with the mission and all the moving parts. But I feel like that would be a great way to get them in motion. You know, when Margaret helped us procure them, we were very clear that the expiration date on them is July. And we knew that would be fine because we're programming through the end of June. So we want to get them in use as quickly as we can so we don't.
Absolutely.
You know.
You bet. That's totally fine. I'm just doing what I can to help. Anything that we can do to get it working is great. Thank you.
Ditto. Okay.
All righty. Anything more about the COVID grant, Ian?
That was it. Just wanted to check in with you and see if you're still game to kind of lead the section on the health law attorney and like why. Sure. And knowing oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I can explain the situation. I'll try to keep it brief.
Totally. And like our other expenses too, what the board is doing is we're approving up to that amount. So we might not spend any of it, right? Like we might hire, we might, Doriandra might reach out to Cheryl and say, hey, Cheryl, the board has approved this much for a health law attorney. Is there one you would recommend? And Cheryl might say, actually we're just uncomfortable even with the money, right? And so in that case, we'd have to be, well, we tried, and then we'll try to do something else.
Yep, that's a possibility, and yep, that's okay. We'll cope.
Totally. But yeah, the next thing I wanted to talk about is the housing grant, because we've signed all the paperwork.
Yay!
We should have the money transferred over pretty soon, and that's the $235,000, which will go to the motion to the board tonight is 2 positions, a program director and a program coordinator, to help Whitaker neighbors complete their applications for the Oregon Emergency Rental Assistance Program. And so that's going to assist with past due rent, utilities, and up to 3 months of future rent. And I don't know if you guys saw the news yesterday, but it was pretty huge. The Oregon legislature approved an infusion of another $100 million worth of rental assistance.
Yay!
So
I knew they were working on it. I didn't know if it got approved. That's great.
It got approved. And so, of course, like any legislation, there's a lot of work that needs to be done on the back end. Yeah. So, I mean, if you're curious, the legislature also approved a $25 million plan to help address illegal cannabis production statewide, $2 million to prevent gun violence, and $14 million for affordable housing and homelessness prevention programs in the state's 14 largest cities. So yeah, I wanted to put that out there because it's big for us. And I also wanted to share what myself and a couple of the other officers have been talking about with respect to the hiring committee and our plan and all that jazz. So because you and I have been the principal ones working on this, Anand, I wanted to go through this with you. And this should this should be pretty familiar to folks, because this is what we went through in October during the October board meeting. So this is our current contracting structure, right? So program coordinator reports to me, I report to the board, and then the board reports to Whitaker community members. Our new proposal is to have, can you all still see this? It should be a black screen right now. Now it's not. Yes, no, maybe.
That's good.
Cool. So the new proposed structure is to bring Doriandra on as a full-time employee. We've talked about this. She's excited at the prospect of it. And also bring on a new program coordinator whose work would be housing, and they would really be the soup to nuts person. They would literally be the person, if you, Anand, or if me, Ian, or if Margaret is in danger of losing her housing, or if Thea as a landlord has a tenant that's in danger of losing their housing because of COVID, they can reach out to this program coordinator and they will help Whitaker neighbors navigate the Oregon Emergency Rental Assistance application process. And basically this person, their full-time job would be for the next year when we have funding until June of 2023, do this job, basically help people soup to nuts figure out their housing. And they would report to the program director, which would replace me as the grant writer, the grant administrator, the report writer for grants. So I wouldn't be doing that at all anymore. I would just be, organizing meetings and, just like any other board member, deciding on strategy and making votes and stuff. And then we'd still report to community members. So the piece that we talked about, I actually want to skip ahead. Yeah, I need to fix that. Basically, we talked about the proposed staffing structure. And so we wanted to convene a group of 6 board members or 5 board members to be a part of the hiring committee. So what the officers thought is that we should have Claire Roth, Dan Schmidt, Margaret, Thea, and myself as the 5 board members. And we wanted to offer to Doriandra a non-voting seat on the hiring committee so she could help us give her opinions and thoughts on potential candidates. So that's kind of what Delinia, myself, Angie, and Gail wanted to bring tonight is, hey, we wanted to, make the motion. And it's possible that not everyone can be on the hiring committee, right? Because it's a not insubstantial time commitment. Margaret and Thea and myself were on the hiring committee last time. And it's not like we didn't ignore you, Anand, but we chose people based on the amount of time that we thought people could contribute to
Don't
it.
worry, I got plenty of things to do.
Totally. Yeah. We also didn't choose a couple of people just based on their commitments and stuff, but we felt that the makeup of that would be good. So that's kind of where we're at. We thought that now should be the time to be able to bring on the hiring committee, and basically the hiring committee would have a couple of different responsibilities. So the responsibility would be developing a position description for both the program director and program coordinator positions, bringing those position descriptions for those positions to the board for a discussion and a vote during our board meeting in January, outlining the strategy for Doriandra / the social media contractor to promote the position from January to February, interviewing candidates from February to March, and then making a recommendation to the board during our March 16th board meeting, where we would, much in the same way we did with Doriandra, decide who we were going to bring on board. And so then the folks would have, whoever we bring on for those two positions, they would have a month to kind of get up to speed and get comfortable, which isn't a whole lot of time, but still it's more time than nothing before the elections in April. So basically we would have a month of orientation. Basically I would be transitioning out of my role as like de facto program director, which would give enough kind of breathing room for people to kind of get used to everything before the elections in April.
Sounds sustainable. I like that.
So I have a question. I think it all sounds great. So the program director that you want to hire, is that a different name for an executive director, or are you thinking something different?
No, it's actually a different name for an executive director, because Anand suggested program director instead of executive director. Anand, I don't know if you even remember you saying this, but you're like, you think that people in the neighborhood might balk at the title of executive director. So yeah,
really,
we made that change based on Anand's contributions. So I don't know. That was Anand's suggestion. Walk it back.
I mean, it doesn't matter. I've been on, an executive director is what it's always called, but it doesn't matter. I mean, they're all program directors, so they all sound the same. Whereas an executive director is basically, the buck stops there as far as that whatever they're doing in that program. Something like that.
I mean, we could change it back. I mean, how do you feel, Anand, now that I changed it because you suggested it.
I think I don't actually remember saying that, but I think it's actually, in terms of dealing with the programs of the Whitaker Community Council, it makes it sound more based on what we decide to do, whereas an executive director sounds more corporate. It sounds more like, I know it's technically correct, but I think there's a point to that. I mean, as you've pointed out, Ian, the Whitaker Community Council is a couple of things, and it also is a nonprofit corporation, but it is
A neighborhood association.
It is primarily, as Margaret says, it is primarily a neighborhood association who also has a nonprofit corporation status. And by saying program director, I think you're giving, at least from a verbal point of view, you're giving the power to the organization as a neighborhood organization. Whereas if you're saying executive director, it sounds like you're giving the power more to the corporate side. And I'm not sure that would go over quite as well. Honestly, I don't remember saying that, Ian, but actually it's not a bad idea.
I just don't think that all three positions should be called program director. Whatever you call them is whatever you call them, but there's a separation there.
Yeah, so actually one of them is the program director, and then two of them are program coordinators.
Okay, great. My mistake.
Yeah.
And can I ask, Doriandra, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I would like to be elevated to that program director, but have my hands full with what I'm doing. So I feel like I've got a real footprint now into the needs of the council, but that has proven to be a pretty much overwhelming, not overwhelming, but almost full-time job. So I guess I could apply for that position, but I'm not sure who would do everything I'm doing now. So,
Well,
You
how
know-
do you feel about sitting on the, in the interviewing process and
oh,
all of that?
sure, that would be fascinating. Yeah, that would be really helpful. Yeah,
So
I mean,
I'm still trying to determine the difference, because right now you're basically acting as a program director. I'm just gonna say it. You're wearing a zillion different hats. And Ian is.
Well, Ian is as well.
Yeah, I would assert that I am acting as the program director. And it's totally unsustainable, and it's really ravaging my mental health. And so
Yeah, it's ravaging both of you right now. So
truly, but I would say that the distinguishing factor between and I do think that Delinea is currently.
Oh man, you're cutting out, Ian.
Yeah. Okay. So can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can.
Totally. And I would say that, what the program director does primarily is it manages the program coordinators, writes grants, manages grants, and writes reports, and would manage contractors too. Right now, I would say, Delinea or Doriandra, if you want to apply for the program director position, you should, but I don't think that you should sit on the program director review committee then. And I would encourage you to do it. The one thing I would say is that I'm going to advocate for the program director position description is that this person have a strong history of writing grants, getting grants, managing personnel, writing reports, because this person needs to fundraise about $200,000 a year to support all three positions. And it's very, very stressful, super, super duper stressful. And like, I need to tap out because it is a full-time job. Much in the same way that the program coordinator position was a full-time job, but you are working out of class, right? Out of scope. So I think that also needs to be brought into consideration when we make you an offer, and that process should be one we negotiate, right? One that we determine what's fair compensation based on the current market rate of the position, the benefits that we're offering, as well as your level of experience with the council, because it might be that you have a higher salary than the incoming program coordinator for the housing side of things because you have more experience and work with the council. But yeah, I'd caution to conflate program director and program coordinator because the way that I've scoped them in my mind, not on paper, is that the program director is really the person bringing in money, managing staff, managing contractors, managing grants and writing reports, which isn't nothing.
So
Well-
I have a question. Could you do a program grant writer and then a director? Is that? It's been a while since I've been in this area of realm where we were to hire just strictly a grant writer and have a director. I'm just curious. I'm just throwing stuff against the wall again, Ian.
So can I make a comment before we answer that, Thea? Is that okay?
Yeah.
So just to clarify, so basically, Ian, just so I make sure I understand what because the one thing that I have learned about working with Doriandra is that she's very much on the ground, feet on the ground with the people, working with the people, and she's really good at that. And what you're proposing is someone that is going to be on the computer, that's going to be doing reports, that's going to be doing paperwork, that's going to be filing with the city, that's going to be doing all of that stuff, and not so much interacting with the public as they are interacting with the program directors. Did I get that correct?
No, and maybe I'm doing a poor job of explaining this. So there's a lot of stuff that I don't feel the council knows that I do. I mean, that I write grants, right? But
I know you do a lot more than that, and I'm 100% supportive of getting those roles filled for you so that I can see the joy in your face
totally.
when something happens and you are enjoying what we are doing as a community.
Totally.
I really want to bring a change around, and I'm 100% supportive of that.
Your-
I'm just
your
trying to
Thanksgiving
understand what you're
Thing is
talking about.
overflowing, Ian.
Yeah, so I think that what the program director does is what an executive director would do of a normal organization. So I think
Okay.
that it's better to
Okay.
frame it as an executive director, but we're not calling it that. But it's the same exact thing. This person manages people, manages contractors, writes grants, manages grants, writes reports. So they're definitely a relationship-based position, just in the same way an executive director is anywhere else. I think the real charge of this position will be to raise $200,000 a year, which is,
That's a lot of money.
yeah, and like it is a lot of money, and yeah, I mean, like, we don't have a fundraising base established, right? We don't have community members who donate regularly to the WCC, which is something we could do. And it wouldn't have to just be in the Whitaker. You know, these could be folks all around the community that really love what we do, that donate. But again, this isn't something that we've established over time. So having that mix of like fundraising, development experience, you know, maybe with a Rolodex of people who they have to be able to donate in addition to grant writing experience, so they're able to write grants and secure grants, but also the financial administration, like Margaret said, the filing of the paperwork, that's not nothing. They need to have experience with accounting, with budgeting, with fiscal management, with submitting materials to the IRS, you know, bookkeeping, you know, managing QuickBooks, which again, and this is like, you know, this is all stuff that I can do, but there's someone who's better, right? There's like so much better, just in the same way that Doriandra was so much better than I was at managing the clinics. And I'm almost certain that there are people in our community, both in the Whitaker and more broadly outside in the greater kind of Eugene Springfield area, who would just jump at the chance to be able to do the work that we're doing.
It's more of a, go ahead, Anand, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to add that if this works out well, it has great potential in that there are things that the community would like to see done, the things that the council would like to see done. There are things that our community needs. And if we get somebody who's really good at all these things having to do with the financial end, we could actually provide a lot more resources for our community. It's got a great potential, but we got to get it started someplace, and this is a great place to start. That's all I got to say about it.
So
Margaret.
Doriandra, do you want to be on the hiring committee?
Yeah, I want to just speak to a couple more quick things about my position, because as Ian mentioned, I've really been working above the title in that I am managing the other contractors and providing lead and support for their project and actualizing contracts, sometimes writing contracts for our other partners. And so there's a lot of empowerment that I feel I have, which is more like on a management level, which is very much in line with further and past skill sets. But I feel like if there's a program director, that a lot of those things need to go to that higher level, because, or I just need to be elevated to say program manager, or there should be a little happy medium in there, because the day-to-day work I'm doing is excellent. But if, you know, there's stuff that comes up, you know, in the last day or two where, you know, Cheryl, for instance, is asking me to provide quotes here, and as we're writing a press release. Well, is that really something? I mean, I'm empowered to do it because of the leadership I've given the council thus far, but suddenly, like, why would the program coordinator give the media a press release when a program director who doesn't know what I've been doing should actually be doing it? So there's some funny little things that I think we'd have to level out, and you know, to continue to just be more in line with the way a real nonprofit works. And yeah, technically, Thea, I loved what you were saying, and that's what I would wish, was that we had just a dedicated development person, because in most organizations I've worked at, that's how it goes. You've got the development director, you have the program director, and they allocate in that way, and they work kind of in tandem. So I am totally at the deference of your experience, though, in the way that the council has performed, but just know that I stand ready to support the ongoing work in whatever best way capacity works for the organization.
Well, I think Ian stated earlier that whatever you're doing is completely up to negotiation as far as elevating your pay, clearing your duties, whatever that is. I
Yeah.
got that right, didn't I, Ian?
Well, a lot of this is in flux because everything is up to vote for the council, but just know that
Yeah.
I can't keep doing this, right? And we're talking about kind of at capacity, like I'm the executive director, the development director, all these things, and I'm completely unpaid and working more than 80 hours a week. So that's just a baseline for me and how I need to get out of this. And I think that in the best case scenario, right, we would have a development director, an executive director, program coordinators, but we're not in the best case scenario. What we're doing is working towards a best case scenario. And I think part of what we need to do is take things out of Doriandra's scope of work so she can focus on the things that, you know, I've heard from my time with her, she's really passionate about: the arts management, the health equity work, and really subsume some of the duties to the program director position, knowing that this is going to take time to be able to do, right? This could be, you know, something that we wouldn't hire someone until March. And so maybe what we could do in January is renegotiate Doriandra's contract to better reflect compensation with the work that she's doing right now for January through March. And then, change the compensation when we brought her on board, or to hire her as an employee in January. But know that, resources are limited too. Resources are limited both in the scope of the grants we're currently receiving, but also in order to make the position sustainable. And I do mean sustainable because I want to be able to offer not only competitive pay, but a competitive benefits package too, right? So people want to continue to work with the organization, and a competitive, number of hours a week that you're working. I don't want this to be, traditional nonprofits where people work 50-hour weeks for very little pay. I would prefer it to be like 33, 35 hours a week. And then you could spend 5 hours a week thinking, right? Or 7 hours a week thinking about bigger problems and have competitive pay and benefits. So a lot of this, I feel, is really up to the hiring committee, right? To be able to have these conversations and be able to come to a set of determinations which we can then in turn bring back to the board and say, hey, y'all, these are our thoughts and hopes and dreams. Greater board, what do y'all think? To me, the hiring committee is just the starting point.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking most importantly is that we have to have a really good job descriptions for like what Doriandra's doing, and then what our future jobs we're going to be talking about, so that they're very, very clear cut, because you're
Sure.
going beyond your scope right now. And thank God you are. And Ian's going beyond his scope right now. And thank God, because otherwise all this wonderful stuff wouldn't be happening. But it can't continue. Otherwise, we're all going to be in a padded room together. So just my thoughts.
Well, I think that's the point, is trying to make it so that we don't end up that way.
I will
Yeah,
tell
Johnson
you,
unit's closed.
I will tell you, Doriandra, if you decided that you were interested in the program director's position, I would hate to see you buried in paper, because you are so good at building relationships with the public and with places like the mission and all of that. You've already built those, and you're building them, and you're so good at it.
Thank you. I really hear what you're saying, and definitely echo that. As I love people and I love community engagement. It's like boots on the ground that changes things. And so, yeah, I agree with you. Thank you.
I also want to say that I don't want to stifle your professional development opportunities and make you feel underappreciated too, either compensation or work that you want to be doing. So I hope you know that I'm just like one person of an 11-person board. And I'm really hoping the hiring committee will not only create the position description for these 2 new positions, but also come together with good information and say, Doriandra, how does this scope of work and this sound, and know that, we might make an offer of, January through June, you would have a higher rate of pay, knowing that you're working beyond your current contract, and then in March you would transition to something else. But yeah, I don't want you to, I want to make sure that you stay with your organization and you love your time here, and you feel like this is a chance for growth.
Yay! So it is almost 7 o'clock. Just being one. Ian, did you have anything to say about the new grant stuff?
Yeah, there's a new funding opportunity that's out. Doriandra had some ideas. I know that you'll have loads of ideas, Anand. So I just wanted to find a time where you, myself, Doriandra, and then Megan, who's come to public health and safety meetings as well, who does like a lot of community, resilience work, can get together, and so we can bring something to the board for the January board meeting, because I think that we'd be competitive. It's through Oregon Health Authority, and it's all around public health modernization.
You got any time next Wednesday?
Nope.
Okay, that's okay.
We should do something via email. Yeah, because I'll be deep in holiday time.
I got nothing against an email chain. That works. I actually kind of like written stuff better because I can always refer back to it. I don't have to depend on my memory, because my memory sucks.
Totally. Are y'all cool with stopping the Public Health and Safety Committee meeting recording? Cool.
Yep.